Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you very much, devotees, for joining us again. Very happy to be here with you and to be able to share a little from Nectar of Instruction. What an exceptional book, full of so many instructions, wonderful instructions. So we're continuing through the purport of verse 3 of Nectar of Instruction. Actually, I can say that we will try to finish the purport of verse 3 tonight. It may or may not be possible, but I would ask you, at least anyone who may have a question, try and send your question in to Premagni Devi Dasi on Facebook Live by just putting it in the feed, or Kirti Kumari Radhe Vinstagram, okay? Because it's quite possible that at least we will do some questions tomorrow, maybe all. Anyway, okay, so here we go. This is the verse again. Utsaha nischaya daryat, tatat karma pravartanat, sangatyagat satovrate, sadbir bhaktir prasidyati. Translation: there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. 1, being enthusiastic. 2, endeavoring with confidence. 3, being patient. 4, acting according to regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, from Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. Oh, isn't that's very strongly put. Undoubtedly assure the complete success. Okay, so yesterday then, we started going through the purport, what I referred to as the sort of like the introduction, the introductory part of the purport. So, you know, in terms of our PDF, if any of you are using it, I don't know, but according to that, we are right at the top of page 17. Right at the top of page 17. Yes. So now we're getting into each one of those 6 principles or activities in a little detail. So first of all, of course, there's enthusiasm. And Prabhupada makes the point that just in general, whatever you're trying to do, if you're not enthusiastic, you can't really be successful. If it's Krishna consciousness, if it's material life, if it's book distribution, if it's chanting japa, if it's just in material life, just making money, or anything like that, unless you've got enthusiasm, it won't be very difficult. It will be too difficult. You won't be able to make headway because there's so much sort of resistance from the material energy. Yes, that's how it works. So a devotee, therefore, so Prabhupada explains, a student, a business person, an artist, or a parent, without enthusiasm, it's going to be a failure. So, yes, so similarly in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, we have to be enthusiastic. We have to be. Otherwise, if we just get into ignorance, tamagun, just, it's very hard. I don't know if I can do it. Now, of course, we shouldn't be falsely confident, like, yes, I can do anything. But we should have enough faith in Krishna to know that if I try nicely, Krishna will help. So then Srila Prabhupada goes on, let's see. Well, I'm skipping down. Oh, actually, no. Going into the next paragraph. Prabhupada quotes a Bhagavad Gita verse, chapter 9, verse 4. Basically, everything belongs to Krishna. Everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore we should try to use everything in Krishna's service as much as possible. Prabhupada gives the example of how he uses a dictaphone, a recording device for speaking his translations and purports. And Prabhupada makes the point that he's sure the person who invented the dictaphone was not really expecting it to be used in devotional service to the Lord, telling people to give up material life. But there it is, it's being used. Or our telephones, I'm sure many of you are using telephones now. I'm using 2, plus a computer, plus a video camera. Sure. So these people, they probably never thought, Mr. Samsung, that the devotees are going to use their things for transmitting Krishna consciousness. But here we are. We're doing it right now. Yes. So that's Krishna consciousness. Engage the property of the Lord in the service of the Lord. So we go down to the next paragraph, and Srila Prabhupada makes a very, you could say, foundational statement, a very important and valuable statement. It's really nice. Just at the beginning of that next paragraph. Endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. You should make a note of that. You should make a note of that. That endeavor, we're trying, we're endeavoring, but endeavoring with intelligence. Endeavoring with intelligence in Krishna consciousness, remembering the Lord, knowing we're doing it for the Lord. So Prabhupada says, this is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. Okay. So this is a type of definition of Krishna conscious enthusiasm. Okay, so let's carry on into the next quality. It's interesting, Prabhupada doesn't say so much here about all these different qualities. And it's interesting, in our PDF, if you're using it, we're right down at the bottom of page 17 now. And Prabhupada does an interesting thing, which he does from time to time, and he's also done before in Nectar of Instruction. He goes on to, he's discussed one quality, and instead of just going to the next one, he jumps over one. So he starts discussing patience, dharyat, which is actually number 3, strictly speaking. But anyway, no problem at all. We're going to come back to confidence, for sure. Okay, so, So Prabhupada makes, the first point he makes is that in Krishna consciousness, whatever we're doing enthusiastically, whatever we're doing, we must do enthusiastically. But whatever you're doing enthusiastically, you also have to do it with patience. It's an interesting combination, enthusiasm and patience. And we'll go on to confidence in a few minutes. And the 3 of them, enthusiasm, patience, confidence, they sort of make up a team, actually. Anyway, for the time being, patience. We shouldn't be impatient in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada gives his own example, that he started this Krishna consciousness movement single-handedly, one man on his own, one elderly man, more than 70 years old, on his own, in a completely foreign country and a completely foreign culture. And Prabhupada says, in the beginning, not much happened. People were not coming forward initially. And we know from the Lilamrita, Prabhupada explains in the Lilamrita, that he was trying to preach, of course, but people were not coming forward. He was trying different venues, different places and groups of people, but they were not really reacting. And Prabhupada explains in Lilamrita that as a result, a type of, you could say, a doubt arose in his mind. That, am I doing the right thing here? Because this place, America, it's just really degraded. Maybe the time is not right. Something like that, Prabhupada thought occasionally. So Prabhupada says that occasionally he would go back down to the harbor, to the docks, where the shipping company, Scindia, who he had come to America with, and he had like a free ticket back to India if he wanted to use it. So he would go down there. On a few occasions he went down there and inquired, when is the next ship going back to India? Thinking of maybe going back. But then he found out that the next ship is still a little bit off in the future, so he carried on preaching. But then suddenly when he started preaching to the young people, the hippies, things really started taking off. So then he gave up that idea. So, but the thing is, his point here is that he was very patient. He was really very patient. And because he was doing like that, gradually people came to understand. Then Srila Prabhupada, he gives us a little, it's sort of like a formula, you could say, that if we take the instructions of the spiritual master and execute them patiently, depending on the order of Guru and Krishna, then, well, this is his recommendation at least. This is his recommendation. This is what we should do. And, well, we're going to go on to confidence because in this paragraph, the same paragraph, Prabhupada switches over to confidence and combines confidence and patience, actually. But one very interesting and important point I want to make, and I suggest also that you write this down, is that Prabhupada, he talked about the relationship between enthusiasm and patience on some occasions. And Srila Prabhupada made the point that enthusiasm without patience leads to the mode of passion. But patience without enthusiasm leads to the mode of ignorance. Isn't that interesting? And you can understand that. Enthusiasm with no patience, just running around and pushing and like that, just endlessly. It's very easy to become frustrated like that, because of the material world. Sometimes it's not easy to just do what you want to do. But then on the other, so frustration can easily arise. This is all mode of passion. But on the other hand, patience. You may fall asleep if you become too patient and you just can't be bothered getting up and getting out and just trying your best. So this is a very important point. So now in the middle of the paragraph, Srila Prabhupada starts introducing confidence also. That enthusiasm and patience, they're very important, but there also has to be a type of Krishna conscious confidence. And it's not really just like self-confidence. I can do it. If I decide, then I can do it. It's more a confidence in Krishna. That if I try my best enthusiastically, but being tolerant and patient because it's the material world, so things sometimes happen, things go wrong. So that sort of state of mind, but then confident. If I carry on like this, Krishna will be merciful. So these three come together in a little sort of package, you could say. Enthusiasm, patience, and confidence. And they're very important for our foundation in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so Prabhupada, we're in the same purport. In our PDF, we've just gone over to the top of page 18. And Prabhupada gives very, sort of clear example and interesting example that the successful execution of Krishna conscious activities requires both patience and confidence. And he gives the example of a newly married girl, young woman. She just got married. And so she just got married and she wants to have a baby. Where are the babies? Yeah. I mean, sorry about that, but yeah, like now. I want a baby now. We're married. It's bona fide. There's nothing wrong with it. I want a baby now. Prem sichas. So, but Prabhupada makes the point, and it's obvious that it doesn't work like that. But if she serves the husband nicely, if she plays her role very nicely, then in due course, a baby will certainly come. And so there has to be a combination of patience, but then confidence also. That if I do my duties patiently, without, stressing and being too hyper, then a baby will come. A baby will come. Yeah. So that's a nice example, a very practical example. Let's see, what now? So Srila Prabhupada makes an interesting point in the purport. Where is it? Let me see. So Prabhupada gives, you could say it's sort of a type of definition, something like that, of confidence in Krishna consciousness. That the devotee thinks, Avashya Rakshibe Krishna. We're in the same paragraph. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. This is called confidence in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that's nice. That's very nice. And Prabhupada says another thing here. Prabhupada says another thing, very important, that in devotional service, surrender means that one has to become confident that Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. This is Krishna conscious confidence. Okay, we're doing well. Now, devotees, we're on page 18 in our PDF. And Prabhupada goes on to the fourth of these positive devotional activities, positive devotional principles. That is, tat karma pravartanat. Acting according to regulative principles, such as Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam from Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23, hearing, chanting and remembering Krishna. Tat karma pravartanat. So this, of course, they're all very important points, and this is definitely a very important point. Prabhupada says in the purport there that we should not be lazy in Krishna consciousness. Of course, he's said this in different ways already. I mean, here we're finding in this book there's a certain amount of repetition and, driving points deeper into our hearts. So we shouldn't be lazy, but we should be enthusiastic to engage in everything in Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada now specifically points out, following the regulative principles, we should be enthusiastic to execute, to follow our regulative principles, and everything else. But here he's emphasizing regulative principles. Not be lazy. You know, you've heard what I've said it many times, I'm sure you've heard it before, that Srila Prabhupada said, in Krishna consciousness, there is no place for lazies or crazies. Yeah. I'm sure none of you are crazies, but to become lazy, well, you know, these things can happen sometimes. Okay, so then, like we say, Prabhupada points to our regulative principles, that our regulative principles are not just formalities that we have to do and, you know, just like a duty you have to do. But he lists the 4 regulative principles. For illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, intoxication, they're forbidden. A devotee must be very enthusiastic about following them, Prabhupada says. And Prabhupada makes a very important point. This is really important point, that if a devotee becomes slack in following any of these regulative principles, his progress will certainly be checked. Yes. We know, you know, maybe particularly in household life, grihastha life, if you're just living on your own, your family. Anyway, whatever your living situation is, you should be aware, if you're trying to be serious about Krishna consciousness, that you really need to follow the regulative principles properly. You really do. Otherwise, if you get into some mixed situation, like illicit sex life, perhaps, it may be the most common. Anyway, just use it as an example, or take any of them. Take any of them. If you just get involved in breaking just any one of the regulative principles, and it becomes a bit of a habit, and, you know, in your mind you try to justify it that, well, what can I do? Like that. Well, what is going to happen, as Prabhupada says here, your progress is going to be checked. Or in other words, Krishna consciousness, the whole experience of being in Krishna consciousness, is just not going to be as nice as it could be. It's really not going to be as nice as it could be. And in fact, you're running the risk that sometimes, because you have this attachment to this activity against the regulative principles, and you're breaking the principle from time to time, then from time to time your mind may come up with all sorts of doubts about Krishna consciousness. Why am I doing it? Why am I chanting? Why this? Why not that? Why not, here's an example. Why not just watch television every night for a few hours? Why not? So like this, one's Krishna consciousness becomes dragged down. And as a result, one's experience of happiness and just the whole experience of Krishna consciousness becomes less. And you become less happy and inspired. So Prabhupada, what now? Yeah, Prabhupada translates. In the middle of the paragraph, Prabhupada says, Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends tat karma pravartanat. One must strictly follow the regulative principles. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Sometimes some devotees try to suggest that, in ISKCON, we're too much into Vaidhi rules and regulations, whereas in other groups, we're into higher things. But believe me, you cannot actually get into higher things in a meaningful way unless your situation in the regulative principles in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is very good. That makes your foundation strong, and then you can build. So there are those negative restrictions, Prabhupada says. Then, of course, there's positive, chant 16 rounds. But then also Prabhupada wanted us to read his books, engage in practical service, and various positive activities. So, right, then next we go to the next paragraph, and Prabhupada goes into point number 5. There are only 6, so we are making progress, and it does seem to me that we're going to finish the purport of verse 3, quite nicely. So it's the next paragraph in the PDF, if you're following the PDF. It's the next paragraph. Furthermore, middle of page 18, furthermore, in order to be successful in devotional service, one must give up the association of undesirable people. We have heard this before. We have heard this before, haven't we? Yes. It was in verse number 2, just put around in a slightly different way. Yeah. And indeed, Prabhupada quotes a verse spoken by Lord Chaitanya, which we quoted the other day, in regard to basically the same idea, from verse 2. Asat Sangha Tyaga E Vaishnav Achar. Lord Chaitanya was asked, how can you recognize a Vaishnav from amongst, so many people? And Lord Chaitanya said that. Asat Sangha Tyaga E Vaishnav Achar. That very prominent feature of a Vaishnava, of a devotee, is that Tyaga, they renounce asat sangha, materialistic association. Asat, literally you could say, means not eternal. Not eternal association. People engaged in temporary material activities. Yeah. And here's a couple of quotes I took out. Please listen to these. These are good ones. They're from Prabhupada. They're from Nectar of Devotion, actually, chapter 7. You can look them up there. I'm not sure exactly where, but they're in the 7th chapter of Nectar of Devotion. And Prabhupada says, listen to this. In the Katyayani Samhita, it is stated that even if one is forced to live within a cage of iron, or in the midst of a blazing fire, he should accept this position rather than live with non-devotees who are through and through against the supremacy of Lord Krishna. Similarly, in the Vishnu Rahasya, there is a statement to the effect that one should prefer to embrace a snake, a tiger, an alligator, rather than associate with people who are demigod worshippers and who have so many material desires. And that's demigod worshippers. What to speak of just gross materialists? Well, yeah, that's something, isn't it? Think about those verses. And then Prabhupada quotes Tandara Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanivas. We talked about that the other night. That's Narottam Das Thakur. All I want to do, my only desire, is to serve the lotus feet of the devotees and live in their association life after life. So, yeah, now the number six is following in the footsteps of the great acharyas. And Srila Prabhupada starts introducing this in the same paragraph. In the same paragraph, Prabhupada starts saying, let's have a look here. Narottam Das Thakur has recommended living in the company of pure devotees, executing regulative principles laid down by the previous acharyas, like the 6 Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan, Jiva, Raghunath Das, Gopal Bhatta, Raghunath Bhatta. If one lives in the association of devotees and follows the instructions, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas, then Prabhupada says there is little chance of associating with non-devotees. And Prabhupada says the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is opening many centers just to invite people to live in the company of devotees and practice the regulative principles of spiritual life. Now, of course, this was spoken back in the days when ISKCON meant an organization of temples, and there was hardly, 100 householders in the whole movement living outside of temples. But we can still apply what Prabhupada says here to the type of situation that many of you listening to this are in, as householders, living with your family in some house or a flat, and having to work and do the needful to bring up the family, etc., in Krishna consciousness. So in that sort of situation also, we should live in the company of devotees. Your family should be devotees, first of all, as much as humanly possible. And rather than mixing intimately with the neighbors and just the general people around, you should have meetings and gatherings with devotees at the temple, nearest temple, or invite them to your place, etc. This fulfills the idea of inviting people to live in the company of devotees. So then Prabhupada goes on, next paragraph is sort of continuing the same theme and sort of digressing a little bit, or maybe going back to tat karma pravartanat, transcendental activities performed with devotees. Let me just read it so you get it. Prabhupada says, what does Prabhupada say? That, well, we should try to come to the platform of Vishuddha Sattva, pure transcendental goodness, by Getting up early in the morning, Prabhupada says, what time? 4 a.m. Haribol. Try your best. Try your best. You know, yeah. Try your best. But this is what Prabhupada says. And Prabhupada encouraged, and the GBC body encourages, that householders have, as much as practical, at home, a morning program like what happens in the temples. And this is what Prabhupada says here. Getting up early, having a Mangal Arati, reading Bhagavatam, having Kirtan, and so on, at home. Why not? Well, of course, many of you do that. So one should at least try to do that. And Prabhupada says, this is called satovrite, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, making your life, the program of your life, a spiritual program like this. Okay, so now Prabhupada goes into a concluding phase. A concluding phase. If we go over in our PDF, if you're in our PDF, Prabhupada begins top of page 19, beginning of the paragraph. If one strictly follows the advice given in this verse by Srila Rupa Goswami, namely being enthusiastic, being confident, being patient, giving up the association of unwanted people, following the regulative principles, and remaining in the association of devotees or following in the footsteps of previous acharyas, then one is sure to advance in Krishna consciousness. This is what Prabhupada said in the verse, if you remember. Prabhupada was just so extremely emphatic. Just so extremely emphatic. Let me just read the sentence again. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. Yes, it's pretty emphatic. And so then, let's see, as we go on, well, yeah, in this next paragraph, after the Bhagavad Gita verse, there's a Bhagavad Gita verse quoted, then the next paragraph, Prabhupada revisits, he goes back to the subject of confidence, how we should be confident in Krishna and in the process of Krishna consciousness. So in order to do that, well, Prabhupada makes the point that if we just practice nicely, we'll be successful, and it'll be better than trying to engage in some other, like yoga, meditation, austerities, or whatever, something like that. Yes. And here, at the end of that paragraph, Prabhupada says, Prabhupada is getting now into a whole sort of focus on you can be confident, you should be confident, and you can be confident, because Krishna is merciful, and the process of devotional service is very powerful. So Prabhupada says, in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's stated, one must be calmly convinced that those who have given up devotional service to engage in severe austerities for other purposes are not purified in their minds, despite their advanced austerities, because they have no information of the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So in the next paragraph, and we are coming right to the end almost, in the next paragraph, Srila Prabhupada starts quoting verses for giving confidence. Or actually it even starts, in the same paragraph that we read the verse from the 7th canto from. Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita 9:31. It's a very nice verse for giving confidence. Krishna says, Kontiya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Means he never lets his devotee down. And then Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 40. Neha bikramanashosti pratyavayana vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor of Krishna consciousness, there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. This is giving confidence in the process of devotional service. It's such a wonderful verse. And Prabhupada goes on like this, making statements of this sort, that even if a devotee who is not advanced, not mature in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, even if such a devotee falls down, still there's no real loss. There's an immediate loss, of course, but in the long term, there's no real loss, because Krishna will engage him again after some time in devotional service, and he will go on. He will go on, yes. And it's almost like by Krishna's arrangement, you sort of get dragged along. Even if you're not doing well, but somehow you get dragged along by the mercy of the Lord and his devotees. Yeah, it's like that. So then, I think I'll just conclude now by reading the last couple of sentences of this purport. Yes, that since all the devotees of the Lord are under the protection of his supreme potency, they should not deviate from the path of devotional service and take to the path of karma jnana or yoga. This is called utsahan nischayad dharyat tat karma pravartanat. Tat karma pravartanat. Enthusiastically executing the regulative activities of devotional service with patience and confidence. In this way, one can advance in devotional service without hindrance. Hare Krishna. Well, very good. So we have concluded verse 2. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.